playing. Coryell was also the one who introduced me to the music of Jimi Hendrix. And I remember specifically driving across the Golden Gate Bridge and hearing Jimi Hendrix on the radio and just embracing it, knowing that
nothing would be the same.
Nothing would be the same.
It wasn't.
And indeed, it wasn't. These were in the very first days when I was playing the electric bass as well.
I didn't know that had. Yes, of course. So we're talking 67, 68?
Yeah, 68, maybe even into 69. In that time.
But Coryell, okay, so Bob Moses told me about the group Free Spirits that was around at that time with Jim Pepper, Coryell, Bob, and I can't remember one other member. And it's perilous to say somebody was first at something, but Coryell in a certain way was a jazz rock guitarist before that existed. Am I right about that? That he really grew up and embraced both worlds?
That would seem to be the case. Yeah, he certainly brought that to
that energy
to the Burton Quartet and introduced me to a lot of the
and Gary wanted that
vocabulary.
Right?
Yeah, and Gary wanted it, and so did I. And Coryell was in addition to being a valuable resource in that way, was backed up his talk with the walk. He was a wonderful. His playing embodied the possibilities for those musics colliding and profiting from each other.
Yeah. We're going to move to one of my favorite titles of yours. Now, I played this as a teenager because it's in the real book, and my feeling about this song is there's some country music in it, and I feel like it influenced Pat Metheny. But you tell me. General Mojo's Well Laid Plan.
There's lots to talk about.
We're introducing now Steve Swallow, the composer, for one thing.
Oh, so we are.
And that's an important thing that we need to dig into. But I just want to briefly say why I said what I said at the beginning. I hear echoes of the song Bright Size Life in this, because there's this open triadic sound that's, I mean, to say country music is a little bit inaccurate, but on the guitar, that's what we associate some of those sounds with. And then there's a place of dissonance in the bridge section, as there is in Bright Size Life, where all of a sudden there's these wide leaps. just a thought, but talk to us about General Mojo's well-laid plan. I want to know how you named it that, and talk about this this burgeoning sense of Steve Swallow, the composer.
Yeah, okay. First, the title. The title is a reference to 1940s United States government propaganda films.
Wow.
In the effort to mobilize the country against its enemies.
No kidding.
And the line from which the title derived was General Tojo's well-laid plans. General Tojo was the personification of Japanese evil, and his well-laid plan was obviously to enslave the United States. I was using that reference as a means of discussing race and the issue of race in the United States, which is inevitable to confront if you play this music. Yes. You need always to be considering your attitudes toward race. Secondly, you talked about the dissonance in the bridge. That's a tone row.
Oh, no kidding!
And
you sly devil.
Yeah, worlds collide. Indeed. A lovely story that goes with that is that tune, General Mojo's well-laid plan, was not to have been on the album we were making at the time. In fact, it had just been written, but I hadn't presented it to the band at all. But we found at the end of recording the stuff that we intended to record that we were a tune short. And so I said, okay, I got this one that I've been working on. I was able to quickly sketch it out for us to play. But of course I couldn't remember the tone row for the bridge. And the clock was ticking. The studio time the valuable studio time was turning over. At the time, I had one or two very young babies at home, and my wife at the time was out, and my kids were being babysat by a mathematician from NYU who was our buddy. So I called up this guy who had no musical training whatsoever, and I needed to get the tone row from him. So I had to really call on my ability to
you sent
describe
him to your piano
stuff. I said, yeah, go to my piano. There's a piece of music on it. Bring it to the phone. Now, there's this thing called the stave, which is comprised of 5 lines. And so we just began at that point, and I said, and now I'm going to tell you about the lines, starting with that we'll call the bottom line 1 and the next line up 2.
That's amazing.
And then we will also have to consider the spaces between the lines. And I'm talking to a mathematician, so he's having a wonderful time. He's just loving this. And I managed to do it, to get the tone row from him
That's amazing.
In just a few minutes.
Like,
right. No, the band
I'm hungry.
The band is pacing around in the background and all of that. But we got and very quickly put this song together. We'd never played it before and recorded it and
I love the way this is Jerry Hahn, I believe.
No, that's Coryell.
That is Coryell.
It's still
mistaken.
Coryell.
So this is the album Duster.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is Duster. And you're correct also that there are some country roots lurking in there, but I wish I could claim that I knew the music of the real country people, but in fact I didn't at that time. The music that I was listening to that gave birth to that song was really the burgeoning LA scene at the time, the Byrds in particular.
Okay, come on, that totally makes sense.
Roger McGuinn was
country
the
rock,
influence.
And meanwhile, we can credit Coryell with the hammer-ons that are so reminiscent of that
right, and
era of
you know, the tune was in that
playing.
vernacular, and he knew exactly what to do. He knew that down cold. And another aside is that's a favorite song of Terry Adams, the NRBQ guy.
No kidding.
And one wouldn't think that he would be drawn to that song at all, but
I see
he
a
liked
crossroads
it a lot,
in this piece, and it was what, 1967?
Yeah, I would think so.
I mean, there was a lot of cross fertilization going on at that time, conscious and unconscious, and I think it's wonderful that Roger McGuinn makes a showing in General Mojo's well-laid plan. I want to note that one of my first bands we named General Mojo.
Aha, lovely. I'm sure it was an excellent band.
Well, that I can't say, but I know that it's one of the best band names that I've ever had.
Uh-huh. Fair enough.
I mean, but Jerry Hahn, who I mentioned, who I mistakenly credited for the last track, is coming up next. And, you know, this is this amazing thing where Gary Burton has employed many of our greatest guitar players going back to what we've talked about and up through Pat Metheny, Mick Goodrick, Kurt Rosenwinkel, Julian Lage. Jerry Hahn occupies a very, I would say, small but important space where, and I'm assuming that what I'm saying is correct, that Gary Burton did know a bit about country music, and he very purposefully wanted to combine it with jazz on Tennessee Firebird and to some degree on Duster. And Bill Frisell and I have talked about this. You know, there are many instances as we go back into jazz history of country music infiltrating jazz, and apparently even Charlie Parker liked country music.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But
and Gary did have a real history in country music as a teenage musician. He spent a couple of summers in Nashville playing with Hank Garland. Who was very important to the country.
An amazing guitar player.
Country vernacular. Yeah.
Well, you know, Gary was at the forefront of kind of bringing rock into jazz and country into jazz, and is just a massively talented person who deserves as much credit as we can give him. I believe that this next track that we're going to listen to is another example of this kind of cross-fertilization going on. And this one has another interesting title. It's a Steve Swallow composition, Doin The Pig. We're going to need to know how you named that, too. And this is a very intricate composition. Well, first of all, it's rare to hear a fiddle player in that context, which is wonderful. That's a really unusual composition. It's somewhere between a fast bossa nova and a sort of leaping etude. Tell us
I'll
about
remember
it.
that. Yeah. Well, I was lucky in my my formative years as a composer to be a member of Gary's band, because there was the need for a repertoire that defined that band's music, and that hopefully defined it in a distinctive and significant way.
It did.
And the inclusion of Richard Green, the violin player, on that was a very deliberate attempt to enrich the music with with country music influences. The title was again a reference to politics and what was going on at that time, and Doin the Pig was an interesting interpretation of that title, I thought. But there were also a bunch of tunes trying to climb the various pop music charts at that time, called doing the rooster, doing the this, doing
So
the
there
other,
were, yeah.
doing the other thing. So I thought I would do the Pig. It was also a sly reference to the producer on that date, who was Joel Dorn, and Dorn and Doin were close, and I wasn't fond of Joel, so there was a sly dig involved in the title as well. It has several layers of meaning.
Well, but it's a very ebullient, outgoing, fun piece of music. Not easy to play, I would imagine, from the melodic point of view, but listening to it, it's got a great groove and a very just outgoing spirit to it.
Yeah, it sounded good. I believe Bill Goodwin was the drummer on
Right.
that one, and he sounded good to me. I haven't heard that recording in decades, and it did sound kind of outgoing. I surprised myself. As a composer yourself, you must have encountered that it's difficult to write outgoing music, because writing is by definition ingoing.
So interesting. I never thought of that.
You're sitting alone in a room, at your desk or at your piano, or however you write, and the idea of writing good time music is a bit of a leap. From the solitary figure in his own dismal room, kind of chained to the desk or the piano, to a nightclub having a good time.
As a composer at this point, did you have a vision of what space you wanted to occupy, or were you just kind of knocking out piece after piece, finding your voice, or
both of those?
What would that vision have been?
Both of those. I was certainly flailing about trying to establish an identity as a composer, but I was also Gary and I were discussing the band's identity and the band's direction often, and in great detail. We were on the road a lot and had nothing but time to spend talking about ourselves, and who wouldn't jump at the opportunity. So there was a lot of that going on. I was trying to emulate my heroes, the Tin Pan Alley greats of of the preceding decades.
Well,
Cole Porter and Gershwin.
I've got to stop you there. We just listened to "Doin The Pig," which is not at all reminiscent of any of those great composers, even though I know you knew that music intimately. So something else was going on too.
Well, I was trying to write music for a specific occasion, to a specific
Group,
set of demands. Just as my heroes were writing for a Broadway show or a particular pop singer,
and for the times as well.
Or Frank Sinatra would say, "I need a ballad for Tuesday." I need an up-tempo tune to spell the misery of my current album, but the record date is tomorrow at noon, so stay up.
Yeah.
I was trying to emulate those people. I was trying to write music on demand, and I was just kind of availing myself of the demand that existed. I think every composer is grateful for a commission, whether it's
or a deadline,
or a deadline, because why else bother? So there was that element to what I was doing.
Well, we're actually, because your most famous song, "Falling Grace," is so well known, I'm actually going to bypass it in our playlist.
Good.
You've probably talked more about that song than you want to, but I'm going to use it as a reference. And by the way, there's an incredible version from 2007 with you and Gary and Antonio Sanchez. I think I've got the year right. A live version.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I couldn't find it in
And
Spotify.
Pat Metheny as well. Yeah.
Excuse me. Most notably, and Pat, of course, has taken this song to new dimensions. What I want to ask you about is there's certain character. I have studied this song way more than somebody should to try to be able to play it. And
likewise.
I even had an interchange with you about that. There's a couple of bars in there that were making me pull my hair out. And there's a couple of things about that show up in your other composing, and I think now's a good time to ask about it. There's a few sneaky things that you tend to do, and I'd like to hear this in your words. There's a circularity to a lot of your pieces where you don't really know. You're not. First of all, there's not the 16-bar or 24 or 32-bar form necessarily, and even if there is, that box is circumvented by a pattern that may be an odd number of bars long. There's also a sense of progressions that you think are leading somewhere and then go somewhere else. So you're sort of diverted into this other harmonic territory. And
at your peril.
At your peril. And so, first of all, I think your songs are easy to get lost in, some of them, if you don't study them. And also, I think that one of the things that stands out about Falling Grace, of course, the chord progression is beautiful, but it's got a very strong melody, and you've got a great sense of melody. Talk a little bit about, am I accurate about these sort of sneaky, I don't want to call it a signature because that's a little too emphatic, but there's got to be something conscious going on for you as a composer where you're circumventing the flow so it feels circular.
And it's a kind of thorny and complex topic, but to summarize briefly, I think what I was working on when I wrote Falling Grace, and am indeed still working on all these many years later, is that there seems to be no peace from it. It is an attempt to kind of reconcile various aesthetics, or specifically a couple of aesthetics. As a young, before my adulthood, as a teenager, I was really exposed in some depth to the American songbook.
Yes.
My first gigs were with bands that played for dancing. I did a lot of that kind of work. At its best, I was in the company of some really remarkable swing era musicians. Buck Clayton, Rex Stewart, Vic Dickinson, Dickie Wells.
No kidding.
Buddy
Wow.
Tate, good players,
Yes.
playing the American songbook. So that was and remains very important to me, that music. At the same time, and kind of parallel to my ever deepening experience with the American popular song, I was, especially in my teenage years, I didn't really see myself as a musician. I was more interested in becoming a poet, and I was reading a lot of poetry, and came to focus on a particular genre of poetry whose leading practitioner was Robert Creeley, whose poems I used for a couple of albums of songs that I subsequently wrote, and
these were the Imagists, if I'm not. Am I using that?
Well, I'm hesitant to call them anything in particular, but they're the poets who kind of derive from William Carlos Williams and who's Ezra Pound as well.
Yeah.
Who is accused of being an imagist often. Charles Olson was a leading theoretician, and but Creeley was kind of the towering figure, and to my great good fortune, I became his friend and spent some time with him subsequently when I grew up. But as a teenager, I was really taken by his work, and by the theory of the poets in that circle, and their attitude toward form was crucial to me. Crucial in that it caused me to break with the convention of writing 12-bar, 16-bar, 32-bar forms, to writing in effect to fill up a pre-existing form.
Well,
Creeley was very emphatic that form was
so interesting.
Form was what you end up with, and the wonderful story he told was one that he got from a sculptor named John Chamberlain, who was famous for his crushed car sculptures. One of his crushed cars resided in a famous bar called Max's Kansas City that was a nexus of cultures in the 60s in New York City, and was notorious for good reason. Anyhow, John Chamberlain was really contemptuous of all of the highfalutin talk about form, and said, "Look, I'm sitting around and I get hungry, so I go to the refrigerator and I get out a lettuce, a tomato, and some cucumber and a couple of other things, and I cut them all up and I put them in a bowl and I toss them together. That's form." And he just insisted that that form is what you end up with. It's not what you start with, and this meant that I wasn't interested in writing 12-bar or 32-bar tunes. I wasn't interested in sonata form or all of the forms available when you study classical music as well. The idea was to allow the line to
determine the form,
to spin itself out. Yeah,
and of course Ginsberg was part of that too. With
Ginsberg
his
was part of that. Gary Snyder
yeah.
was a wonderful practitioner
yeah.
of that aesthetic as well. I was trying to bring that to my love for Tin Pan Alley
So
and for those
interesting.
conventional forms,
Wow.
and that resulted in all these misshapen children like Falling Grace
And General
know.
Mojo, which has
It's a slightly off form.
Yeah.
That's close to conventional, but not quite. And every now and then, I'd in the course of sitting around writing a song, it would assume a 32-bar form, and I was bound by my own rules to accept it. I say, okay, geez, I've written a 32-bar tune, so shoot me, But then with any luck at all, the next one would turn out to be 23 bars or something similar. Again, I'm a jazz composer, and so I am looking toward the improviser. I'm working in effect. It's a service occupation. Being a jazz composer, you're providing the improviser with a stimulating and at the same time comfortable context in which to play. So I've kind of got my eye on challenging the improviser a little bit by distorting the symmetry he might expect and
Yes.
and causing him to wake up, to pay attention.
Well, some of the guitarists who are close to me now have taken this near tune. By the way, Falling Grace, Wolfgang Mutzbell and Julian Lage played it at one of my events a couple of years ago, and it was one of the most amazing things. I have to send you that. 15 minutes.
Good.
Started with a free improvisation. It does what you set out to do, and that's interesting hearing you talk, because I was reading those poets when I was a young man as well, but I never had that specific connection to infuse my writing with those forms, and I think that's such a great composition lesson, that we take things from other art forms to try to address what may be something we're too used to doing in our own art form that we need to break out of.
Exactly. I feel that strongly, and I think the visual arts are ripe for inspiration as well. In that regard, the issue of form is as it happens in painting is really useful to us as improvisers and composers.
And certainly Carla's music follows very few conventional forms. I'm sure there are many tunes that have an even number of bars in them, but like yours, there's surprises everywhere. You think you're going somewhere and you end up somewhere else. In fact, we're going to address one of those pieces in a minute. But meanwhile,
back at the ranch.
We're moving on to, well, how do you like that? This is one of those pieces. So another bright idea that I had was to do a concert with Steve Cardenas and Jerome Harris, people known to you, where we would play the music from Dreams So Real, which is the Gary Burton record from, I think 1974, that
Sounds right. Yeah.
features Mick Goodrick and Pat Metheny, which is a pretty epochal combo.
Not bad.
And Bob
Yeah.
Moses. And I saw that group, I think after Mick had left it. I'm sure you were in it, but we didn't meet at that time. In 75, it probably was. And anyway, I got to look at this music, but because in my memory, the music flowed in a reasonable way. It wasn't something that I listened to and went, oh man, that's too hard for me. I just don't want to deal with that. Then I took a look at a couple of the charts, including this one called Doctor. And both Steve and I were like, do we really want to take this on? I mean, odd numbers of bars that you don't really notice are there, and weird contrapuntal things going on that sound perfectly natural, but you know, if you're going to play the chart, you got to read them. Solo 6-bar solo section followed by another solo section, and it was just amazing to me the fluidity and the flow which you and the other members of the group bring to this piece. Doctor, let's hear some of it. And we're hearing monk line, whole tone lines flying here and there. I mean, that just, how did you put that together?
Beats me.
Everybody was young and energetic, and
there was a lot of work
Carla.
put into that. And again, what you played was almost entirely written.
Yes.
And has the feeling of an improvisation, and that's Carla once again, and her particular genius for straddling the worlds of improvisation and composition. She really she was really in the community.
Yes. Well, that is an extraordinary record that includes. Yes, I want to play one other from that. And this is, well, I have a few favorite Carla Bley pieces, but this one, Vox Humana, is one of them. And it's characteristic of, there's all these different ways that, if I'm not mistaken, she might approach composing, that you might be able to say, well, there's a few that are like this and a few that are a little more like this. This is apparently very simple, very tonal, very beautiful, almost hymn-like piece. But again, surprises. You don't necessarily know where you are, and there's this kind of epic turn to it that is made out of the most simple materials. And amongst other things on this, it's got probably the best recorded solo that I know of Mick Goodrick. I mean, there are many to compare it to, but something about this is just deeply eloquent. And extraordinary drumming, I noticed on this, that Moses just takes to this in a way that's subtle but drives it forward. Vox Humana.
Yeah.
Beautiful guitar lines in there. but it continues.
We're still in the
It's beautiful,
in hand,
yeah.